A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us this evening for this Target 24 webinar. We've got over 280 farmers registered with us this evening, and hope you all had a nice tea and ready to hear from our team. So as we go through the webinar, you should see a question mark on your screen that allows you to ask questions. Please feel free to ask any questions on the way through, and we'll try and answer as many of those as we can at the end. If we don't get around to answering them on the webinar, then we can so I email you separately, so it will capture who you are. So without any more ado, we'll start the proceedings. So running order. So my name is James Haig. And I will be starting off the Target 24 session this evening. So I've worked for ForFarmers for the last 2 years, and so I've been working in the technical and marketing department, as well as sales manager. We'll also be hearing this evening from Anne Coombs, and Anne heads up our Youngstock team, our Vita team. Vita is Greek or Latin for life. And Anne will be running through what it takes to achieve age at first calving of 24 months. We'll also be hearing a case study from Michael Duncan, who's one of our Youngstock team and account managers up in Scotland, and it's a case study of what he's been doing with one of his customers and the journey that they have been on to achieve age at first calving of 24 months. So, and then we'll do questions at the end. So I want to start really with sort of the end point in mind. So as we are growing our heifers and bringing them into the herd, then we're bringing them in to perform well from a lactation point of view. What you can see on the screen at the moment is an analysis of the 305-day lactation averages for a herd of cows. So this is just taken just at random from the very many hundreds of herds that we deal with. And what it shows is that the big crosses in the middle show the averages for each lactation number. Bars to the top and the bottom of those shows the amount of variation of milk yields, 305-day milk yields within that lactation number. So if we look at in the pink cross, this particular herd averaging 6,805 litres also has heifers that are doing over 9,000 litres. They've also got heifers down there doing just around the 4,500, so not quite hitting the mark. So, and it shows the amount of variation within a herd for all these heifers that are typically reared on a very similar system. Of course, it's capturing all the different months of which they're calved in, and it's by capturing this information and understanding where we are and then drilling down into the detail, which is something that our team can help you with. But the starting point is, where do we want these heifers to be producing? If we look at where the third calvers are, then there's a significant increase in yield. Without doubt, the heifers are doing some considerable growing whilst they're in milk in first and second lactations before they get to that mature stage at third calver. But do all of them make that point? So something for you to think about for your own herds as we go through. What are my heifers producing? What are the best ones doing? What are the bottom ones doing? And how could we make that more consistent and achieve higher yields, and so that they're not having to work quite so hard as they go through the lactations. If we then convert that data into financial and we look at what the earning potential of those animals are, we can see that the best heifers are earning us just over £2,500 a head in income, whereas those bottom heifers are only earning 1,280. So in terms of payback, after all the rearing costs that Anne will run through today, then we will see that there's there's some animals there, they're paying themselves back within a year and a bit. Other animals, perhaps they don't pay themselves back in their entire lifetime. If we were then to take the full set of farm accounts and analyse what the average break-even point was per cow, herd, where I've taken the farm accounts, worked out where break-even is, which is just over £2,500. We can see we've got a chunk of animals there that are adding towards profitability, but then there's also a substantial number of animals there that aren't really contributing enough towards profitability. So very much something to think about for your own herds is, you know, what are these heifers achieving, and have we made the investment in them at the right time to help them achieve? We did. We're very fortunate to have some very good working relationship with NMR and CIS. We monitor many hundreds of herds, and we can collate all that data together. So NMR and CIS helped us pull this data set together to look at age of first calving for each of these 608 herds, and look at every single animal. Massive amount of data to look at what's going on. When we look at the average, we found just below 28 months age at first calving, taking all of these herds into consideration. There's also a consideration of within that 28 months age at first calving, there are animals within that herd that are calving sooner and ones that are calving, you know, maybe sort of like 30, 32, 34 months. And it's individual animals which either succeed or fail within the herd. What we find, for those of you that that listened during statistics at school and found it interesting, 3 months is the average standard deviation. What that means is that for the majority of animals we're looking at, the average might be 28 months, but there are still animals that are 31 months age at first calving within those herds. So there's a lot of information there, and it's well worth looking and benchmarking your own farms against this. You know, some great data there in NMR and CIS. Our target really is to get within this box in the bottom left-hand corner. So to try and keep the animals nice and tight, and down around that 24 months age at first calving. So we're even calving a little bit sooner if needs be. But ultimately, they've got to be fit and at a good frame size at that age at first calving of 24 months to go on and perform. It's not just about hitting the months. Our insight reports, which we run for, again, many herds, allows us to take a herd that we might be at the very beginning of a journey, as this one. You know, we've identified on this herd that they're 2.5 years age at first calving. So that's 30 months, if my maths are correct. We can now start working with this farm to bring that average down and monitor it every month to keep track of where we're going. So we thought we'd start this evening with a poll. So this is the bit, this is the part of the evening where you get to interact. So I'm going to know that you will be able to engage in. So on your screens now, you've got 5 options to choose from. So please be as honest as you can. What is your current age at first calving? So just click on one of those, and we'll give you a good minute onto there, just to choose one of those. So the polling is coming in thick and fast. We're up to 30% of you voted so far. Nice to see there's a good bit of honesty coming in here in one of these, because I think one of the starting points with age at first calving is identifying where we currently are. So we're up to now the 70% voted mark. So a few more to go. And there's a good number of you on the call tonight, you know, who are, you know, directly involved in the account, and 1 or 2 people who are either consultants or working within the industry, who may not be able to put some figures in. So I think we're pretty much there. So thank you very much for voting. I'm going to now close the poll. And so what were the scores on the doors? That's not an original catchphrase. By far the greatest proportion were between 24 and 26 months of age, 45% of the votes that came in through into there. We also had 22% with 22 to 24 months, which again is a good target to hit within. Then for a lot of the spring and autumn calvers, obviously a nice tight calving block does require us to hit that, so like 24 months age at first calving. 27% there between 26 and 28 months, and 5% greater than 28 months. So the starting point is very much about understanding where is our team to help crunch those, if anybody needs any help. So at that point, that's enough from me. I'm now going to hand over to Anne Coombs. I just need to give her keyboard access. And with that, I will pass across to Anne. Anne, are you there?
Hi, James. Yeah.
Marvellous. Hopefully you can drive now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, James, for that. I just want to run through some facts and figures on costings, mainly based around the feeding side of costings for heifers calving at 24 months. Quite often we get asked the question, why do we focus on target 24? So some key points here I wanted to focus on. Heifer efficiency being one of the largest reasons why it's important to focus on calving at 24 months. It's been proven to be the most economical way of rearing heifers, and of course, as a result of that, becomes a monetary side of a benefit as well, in terms of reduced feed, labour, semen costs, and overhead costs as well. And of course, it results in increased milk in the tank at an earlier stage as well. So that being quite a large point as to why we focus on here. Another reason being greater lifetime yields. Studies show that heifers that are calving at 24 months, they do produce more litres of milk, on average over 3,700 litres more milk than those calving at 26 months, which is a huge figure. And of course, over a herd of 25% of your heifer replacements calving per year, that's quite a large figure as well. Looking at reducing rearing costs, and of course, by implementing the correct products and procedures to maximise the growth potential that you have on your farm, of course, calving earlier will result in having to feed less heifers at an older age as well. We also look at improved fertility. So of course, heifers being the correct weight and height at bulling will also increase the chance of conception. I'll go into that a little bit more later. And of course, reducing losses, pre and post calving losses. By that, I mean reducing the disease in the young calf and the heifer, of course, and ensuring a healthy transition period so that the heifer and the calf are both firing on all cylinders when they need to. Oh, sorry, I've gone too far there. So when we look at the milk feeding stage, stage 1, on this particular scenario here, I've worked on a basis of an advanced feeding rate of 180 grams per litre. Across the milk feeding stage on that programme of ForFarmers advanced feeding rate, we work on each calf consuming 44 kilos of milk replacer. This is the greatest time to achieve weight gain on a calf in terms of feed conversion ratio. So it really is the time to focus on spending the money to achieve a healthy calf, but also get the most amount of growth that you can for your money. It's quite a staggering figure to think that 44 kilos per calf, when years ago it used to just work on one bag per calf, and now we're looking at over 2 bags per calf. But definitely looking at that increased growth rate has so many benefits in terms of that first 12-week period. We also look at starter feed, and based on an ad lib rationing program, obviously straw as well, really important to have a fibre source, and straw at the moment being particularly expensive. But overall, this particular rearing phase for the first 12 weeks, we'd work on an average of roughly £158 per calf, and that equates to about £2.27 per day. It is, like I said, the most important time to get the feed right for the calf. And we work on a few key targets, mainly doubling birth weight at weaning, again, reiterating the importance of weighing heifers. So getting that initial birth weight is one of the most important, so that you know when you've achieved your goal of doubling the birth weight. One of the more easy ways of understanding when a calf is ready to be weaned would be when they're consuming 2 kilos of concentrates for 3 consecutive days.
Are we to find out, Anne, what milk people are using?
Oh, absolutely. Why don't we have another poll? Well done, James. If we,
we've only got 2 polls this evening, and they're quite close together. So let's pop this up. It's distributing now, as it says. The question is, what milk do you feed your calves? Now you can click one or multiple of these. So you know, feel free to, because I know there's a bit of a mix out there. So voting's off to
some people might feed whole milk for the first week and then move on to a milk replacer. So you could tick both in that instance.
There's all sorts of systems out there, aren't there, Anne?
So many different ways of rearing calves, and not necessarily one is better than the other at all. There's just some main principles that are important. Hygiene probably being one of the most.
So voting's going well. We're pretty much at halfway so far. The voting's still coming in thick and fast. So on these webinars, we quite often do a lot of internal webinars for the teams within ForFarmers, and they get very fast at doing these polls, and so we are pretty much there. I think we're pretty well voted up. So I will now close the polls and share the results.
Wow, very even across the board there.
Yeah. So do you want to talk us through that, Anne?
Yeah, I mean, over the last few years, we've certainly seen more people move away from feeding whole milk only. Many various reasons. Hopefully not very many people are feeding waste milk, as in dirty milk, contaminated milk, antibiotic milk, whatever you want to call it, purely because that is definitely not very good for your heifers in terms of antibiotic resistance, also immune response, and many other things. And I always find it's quite difficult to feed consistently unless it's been pasteurized. However, those people that are feeding whole milk hopefully are pasteurizing it and feeding it consistently at the same temperature. Fortified milk, when we saw some difficulty with the milk price, we noticed a lot more people using whole milk and milk replacer. And seeing some great results with that as well. If it works on farm and you have are in a position where milk price isn't great and you have the ability to do so, then it is a good option to be able to do so.
We had quite a few people that had to dump milk, didn't we? And so feeding milk and
yeah. But obviously, if it's ever comes down to the situation of taking milk from the tank to feed calves, then absolutely milk replacer would be the suggestion the whole way forward, in terms of cost price and consistency of feeding as well. When we look at milk replacers, obviously skim and whey, again, over the last few years, it varies in terms of trends that come along. And again, raw material prices have a large effect on that as well. However, we have seen quite a rise in skim milk replacers in the last 18 months. Which again, I said before, there's so many different systems, and not necessarily one is the right way and one is the wrong way. It's whatever suits that particular farm and their needs and their wants at the end of it. But yeah, absolutely, there's something out there for everyone. And ForFarmers, we have a range of 5 different milk replacers. Let's get a little plug in there. So once we look at
that should be moved on.
Moving on from the milk feeding stage, we move on to the weanings to cycling stage. And slow here. So at this point, I know a lot of people don't, we kind of, we get the calves past the 3-month stage, and then a lot of the time they will kind of be forgotten about almost until they get to the stage that they either need to go to the bull or will be served. It's actually one of the most important stages, in my opinion. At this point, it's really important that we keep the heifers healthy, we keep them growing well and strong. And of course, there is a cost per day to keeping them working on a basis of their forage requirements as well. At the moment, you know, forage stocks seem to be quite short and expensive. So feeding heifers at the moment this winter has been quite expensive. But it's really important, in my opinion, to focus on this stage up to 8 months, because from 8 months to onwards, this is when these heifers start cycling, and they're essentially, their bodies are getting ready for them to start reproducing. So as a key target here, I'd focus on 40% of mature body weight at 9 months old. And if those people that do have scales and regularly weigh their heifers, this would be a great point to start weighing your heifers and work on the 40% of mature body weight at 9 months old. That's also a service that ForFarmers offer, is a weighing service to weigh heifers to make sure that they're on target. I'll go a bit more into that later. We then move on from the weaning to cycling to conception. And this stage here, with what we're looking to do, we're on our heifers are on a rising plane of nutrition. So we want to get as much grub into them, as much energy into them as possible. They're going through a lot of changes. So on average, we're looking at feeding 3.5 kilos a day of concentrate. That might seem quite scary to some people, but what we're trying to do is really get them working and really get them cycling strong and well. Conscious here as well, as I spoke about earlier, in terms of body condition score, we don't want them too fat because fat heifers won't hold. We don't want them too thin heifers won't hold, and we don't want them too old, so old heifers won't hold. So it really is about having the right balance here, having you know, some strong heifers that are ready to conceive. So we work on a basis of 55% of mature body weight at 13.5 months for when they should be served. So like I said, in the process of the build up to this, it's really important to weigh these heifers and know if we're on target or not. Because if you get to 13.5 months and you are behind weight, it takes longer to catch up, and appreciate that obviously once you've gone past that time, then you're running out of time to achieve that 24 months at first calving. Again, a huge cost for this period of heifers, but it is really important that we get them growing well and have the benefits of them more likely to hold to their first conception. We then move on to conception to transition stage. So here we're looking at a 16-month-old heifer, hopefully already in calf, up to 21 months. It's really important that they stay fit and don't get fat in this particular time. Sometimes if they go on to a starchy based ration, which can quite often be cheaper, they do end up putting on a lot of weight. So it is really important at this stage to keep a monitor of their weight. Also conscious as well, a lot of the time, especially coming into this type of season, we will put these heifers out to grass, and they won't be able to consume the amount of grass that they need to per day for their requirements, and also their mineral requirements of growing that calf inside of them. So if we are putting heifers that are in calf out this summer, then it's really important to feed them. Also keeps them slightly friendly as well. We then move on to the transition to calving stage. And at this point, we're working on 85% of mature body weight at calving. And it's really important that we also monitor body condition score at calving as well. Again, this is a short period where there's a large cost involved here. It's really important that we invest into getting the heifer ready and fired up for lactation, but also making sure that she delivers a healthy calf as well. So when we look at the total of all of those costs added together, based on today's climate with the prices in the marketplace today, we're looking at roughly £855 to rear a heifer just in feed costs from birth to calving at 24 months. And of course, we appreciate that post 24 months, there is also going to be an extra cost in terms of feed costs, on average £1 a day on feed costs for keeping that animal going. Quite staggering when we look at the graph on the right hand side at how much investment we are putting into these animals, which is why we want to make sure that we're investing right, so that we can get the best performance out of these animals. So there's also plenty of other costs as well involved. So mainly, obviously, looking at labour being one of the highest, machinery costs, bedding this year especially being expensive, electricity, medication, vaccination, administration costs, and of course, semen conception costs. So the UK average of cost to rearing a heifer to 24 months is £1,800. And I think when AHDB did that figure, the range was anywhere from £3,000 to £1,200. So there's a huge range, but also a lot of people probably underestimate the cost that it has. They have invested into these heifers. And on average, it costs over £2.80 a day to rear a heifer past 24 months calving. So a huge amount of savings to be had by reducing the age at first calving. So in terms of what ForFarmers can do to help you, we have many different systems set up, and James has worked really hard on getting some of our designs into a toolbox. And this toolbox is made to be able to help you understand your true costs on farm. So for example, this particular farm here, we input the herd size 170, their current age at first calving at 28 months. current replacement rate at 25%, heifer loss rate at 9%. So the number needed at age at first calving is 54 and currently at 28 months. The number needed at 24 months age at first calving is 46. So at this particular farm's actually raising an extra 8 heifers, which could be sold and hopefully would be sold to make a profit. An average cash cost of rearing a heifer to 24 months here at £760. Feeding cost per day over the 24 months, £1.60. This totals in a cost of rearing the heifers £952. So a potential saving by reducing the age at first calving from 28 to 24 months of £16,448 on this particular farm, which an average milk yield per cow of 8,200 litres equates to a potential saving of £1.18 per litre. And I'm sure that if that was an option that we could offer you an extra £1.18 per litre on your milk check, that's something that everyone would be really excited about. Like I said, this is a programme that we have, and we are able to work out on farm those figures for you. So it's really important that we set targets as well, and that's something that ForFarmers Youngstock team, we spend a lot of time working with farmers to set their own bespoke targets. There's not one target for every single farm. Of course, we've all got different genetics in terms of mature body weights. Also got birth weights range hugely from farm to farm. And some farms, it's just not possible to be calving at 24 months. We might just need to start and working from reducing from 28 to 26 months. And if we can do that, then there's a cost benefit, and we'll assess the situation again further down the line. So here we work out birth weight and mature body weight and set targets throughout the whole process in terms of expected dry matter intake as well, in terms of rationing these heifers. We also have a weighing service as well. This weighing service is available to ForFarmers customers, and again, those people who want to be able to achieve their targets, reduce their age at first calving, improve fertility, all of this type of thing. We work really closely with our weighing program and an app that we have in terms of monitoring those weights as well. This can also be a great tool when people are looking at potentially selling heifers as well. And like I said, our Youngstock team, we have scales across the country, which we are able to offer a weighing service here as well. So it's really important when achieving target 24 that we understand what it would mean to you, to your farm, setting bespoke targets. We create a plan, we share that with your team so everyone knows what we're trying to achieve and how, making a roadmap of how we're going to get there. We're monitoring results, constantly monitoring results by weighing and offering that service for when it's convenient for you. It's important that you team up with ForFarmers specialists and account managers working closely together to make sure we're rationing these animals to what you have available on your farm. And hopefully at the end of it, we hit target 24 and you see benefits at the end of it in terms of what we've suggested. So our ForFarmers Vita team, our Youngstock team, we've got Michael Duncan, who's going to be speaking in a minute. He's based up in Ayrshire, covering Scotland and Cumbria. Michael's been with ForFarmers as a Youngstock specialist for 5 years. He travels from far and wide across his area, and he's particularly passionate about transition and Youngstock. We've got Emma as well, Emma Moore. She grew up on a beef and arable farm in Northern Ireland. Emma covers Lancashire and Yorkshire. She works as a Youngstock specialist and account manager, and she also has a keen interest in transition cow. We've got Peter Whittle Williams, the famous one. Peter, he was brought up on a dairy farm in West Wales, and he's specialised in young animal nutrition for well over 20 years. And he covers all of Wales and very notorious in the area. And there's myself. I grew up on a dairy farm in Somerset, and I've still got close connection with the farm. And I've worked as a ForFarmers Youngstock specialist for over 6 years now. So we've got a great team. We work closely together, and we are available for any help or inquiries. Our contact details are on here. But please, if you've got an account manager that you work closely with, and you're interested in finding out more, then ask to have your Youngstock specialist involved too. And now I'll pass over to Michael. Ooh.
Am I passed over?
You are.
There you go. Right, I'm just...
Right, have I got control?
Give you control, Michael.
I've got it, aye.
Going through, I'm trying to answer a few as we go along, and then we'll answer as we get to the end.
So
right,
go.
Where you go, Michael?
Hello, my name is Michael Duncan.
Yes.
As Anne has said, I've been Youngstock specialist now in Scotland for the last 6 years. Actually, we're going on. For me, one of the highlights over the last couple of years when it's come to calves is I've had the opportunity to work very closely with a farm at Wigton, Cumbria, which is Dundraw Farm, run by the Harrison family and their fantastic team. And before I start, I wanted to just say a big thank you to them for allowing me the opportunity to share with everybody else the values that we've kind of come up with over the last couple of years as we've headed towards Target 24. They were a perfect candidate because in 2019 they were nominated as ForFarmers Youngstock Rearer of the Year in the North. And so we had a great opportunity to go and actually celebrate that with the ForFarmers gang. When we started this project back in 2018, this was before we'd called anything Target 24, we really just set out with one objective that the farm had, and that was we've invested money in great facilities for looking after our calves, looking after our young stock, and we wanted to maximise those facilities on farm. And ultimately our aim is then to reduce how much time we spent with those heifers being the profit takers, i.e. we're spending our money without result, and increasing how much of their lifetime is going to be spent as our profit makers, i.e. we're putting the same feed into them, but we're actually turning that into profitable milk production. So, if I can skip on to the next slide. No, help. So to put the public into the wellies on farm here, this is an idea of the system that we are working with at the minute. And like I say, there's been investment, there's a lot of time and thought and effort putting into this setup so far. So for the first 2 weeks, our baby calves are spending their time in individual hutches, where they're fed up to 6 litres of a calf milk replacer. And as you can see, it goes through the teat bucket. And at the same time, we're starting then to introduce, even from the very first couple of days of life, onto a hard calf pellet feed and as much fresh water as they would like as well. And in those facilities, we can see the calf has the option of it can be nice and cosy in a hutch, or it gets the opportunity on the rare, warm, sunny days that we get in Cumbria to wander outside. Post that 2 weeks, we then graduate and all the calves are moved into these group accommodations, which is a big straw-bedded yard. And inside that yard, alongside 24 of the calves' other mates, they've got access to 2 igloos. The igloos can house up to 15 each. There's always plenty of space in there. And so if we get a colder day or a breezier day, the calves go inside. If not, we get to wander out into this straw yard, which is all under shelter. The calves have always got access to an all-you-can-eat buffet of calf pellets, and the calf pellet of choice at the minute we're using is ForFarmers Calf Starter 18. And alongside that, we have also got fresh water on tap. And lastly, the calves are actually served up their milk from milk powder from a Home and Low 100 machine. And into each of the 4 strawberry jars, there's a single station which can serve up to 25 calves in each. Can I skip on? Yep.
Yep, it's moved on.
So from 0 to 3 months old, those calves will start out their life, like I say, 6 litres of milk, 150 grams a litre. When we move on to the automatic feeder, we then move up to a maximum of 7.2 litres of milk, 150 grams per litre of milk, and that's a very important value to remember, 150 grams per litre of milk. We start to wean them, and this is a more recent addition, starting at 40 days, and that's a 2-week process so that we're removed of all milk sources by day 56. At the moment, we're using ForFarmers Vitamilk Reader as the milk powder of choice, and this was actually more of a trial and error approach. When we started the project 2 years ago, we were using a whey-based milk powder, but we found we were struggling to an extent to get the growth rates in the first month. So we then skipped up and we moved on to a heavy milk skim milk replacer, which is Vitamilk Premium, 45% skim. And we thought, although we got good results in the baby stages, we did probably hamper a little bit of intake later on. And so we came to the kind of third porridge in Goldilocks's cottage, which was our Vitamilk Reader, which is a 20% skim milk replacer, and it seems to have fit the bill well for the last 2 years. And like to say, the starter we're using is ForFarmers Calf Starter 18 pellets, which is its main selling point is just this idea that the nutrition is so balanced that whether we're eating a kilo or whether that calf wants to gorge up to 6 kilos in a single sitting, we know we're not going to cause any sort of digestive upsets. And that for us is the important thing. If we've got 2 weeks to increase our starter intakes dramatically, we want that to be as safe and as controlled and as consistent as possible, which is why these calves we've worked out this afternoon, actually, we reckon we're probably up to around 200 kilos of pellets getting in within those first 3, maybe just over 3 months, which is double where we would have started that 2 years ago in the same project with it. Try to skip. So post 3 months, these calves will literally move just across the road. I mean, we're talking about 30, 40 feet away where they'll go into the Youngstock shed. And from this Youngstock shed, they are now going to spend the next number of months and years, I suppose, of their life. They come in the shed at one end, and at that stage, we're keeping on with the calf pellets. We keep on with the straw. And as they grow throughout that first month, we'll slowly start to introduce them onto what we're actually running as a TMR system. So 3 months we're still on our pellets, 4 months we're still on our pellets, starting to maybe look at the TMR option. By the time we're about 6 months, roughly, we're pretty much 100% converted onto a TMR. And that TMR is really just going to serve as their diet now for the next 12 to 18 months, with a single exception, of course, that when we get that bit of sunshine for a brief number of months in the summer, we will be turning out these heifers to graze. And throughout that kind of 24, in this case, maybe 23 months of rearing stage, we'll probably see around 7 to 8 months of that grazing with these animals. So skip on one if I can. So that TMR at the minute is made up of grass silage, whole crop, about 2.5 kilos of Selco Plus, which is a moist blend product that ForFarmers produces, half a kilo of rapeseed meal, half a kilo of crimped wheat, and 50 grams of a mineral. Like to say, we convert slowly onto this, so when the calves first transition over to the new shed, we're still keeping the diet the same, so they've got some consistency with our previous accommodation, and then we slowly move ourselves onto that TMR to try and ease the consistency. When we have grazed over the last 2 years, we've usually supplemented to an extent with 1 to 2 kilos of ForFarmers Super Stock Rearer Nut, which is just a concentrate that we can offer them at grass just to give them a bit more dry matter intake, get their minerals and vitamins required made up to as well. And at Dundra Farms, what we're aiming for as we're setting our targets is 200 kilos by 6 months, which is a big ask. A lot of that depends on how well we do for the first 3 months. We're looking at a bulling weight between 370 to 400, and we're really trying to get in that around 12.5 months when we can. And therefore calving somewhere between 570 to 600 kilos at the point that they calve in. So to begin with, when we began this whole kind of venture, the big question was, what would target 24, getting these animals calving in 2-year-old, mean to us? And James very thoughtfully fired this into the calculator app that he'd made up this afternoon with the figures that I'd sent. And based on the scale of the herd, how much it's costing us to be feeding these animals throughout that rearing period, and moving to where we are when we begun at 26.5 months to where we are now at 24 months, we've gone under. The value of that to the farm is actually worth somewhere in the region of about £28,500 of a difference. And so that's when we set out 2 years ago, that's what we were looking to try and achieve. And of course, the big number, I'm skipping on, but the big number there is it's worth to the dairy costings the equivalent of about £0.5 a litre, which when feed costs get to the extent that they are at, and the milk price kind of fluctuates compared to where we were last year to this year, it adds up to a lot of money, really. And as well as that, what we also tend to find is if the studies are to be believed, that actually calving down at these younger stages, not only are we producing a younger herd, but these will tend, at least on paper, to last longer in the herd, meaning we need less replacements so we can hold less stock on farm. And if I'm buying in a kilo of any sort of product, if I'm putting that into a milking animal, I'm getting my money back for it. If I put it into a rearing animal, chances are I'm not quite getting that return just yet. And so it's all about making sure we're maximising what we get back for the money we've spent. So when we started it, our first objective was we needed to be able to measure it before we could manage it. And over the course of about 4 months, we weighed a lot of calves between that 0 to 5 month stage to begin with. And as you can see here, we've got the age of the calf along the bottom, we've got the weight in the calf up the left-hand side. The blue diagonal line represents where we should be at, the weight should be at for that age. And first of all, the main point is we had a lot of points that were below par in that first 5 months that we were aiming for. But the two areas that I really wanted to focus in on and highlight I've brought up in these boxes. And the first one was we never got a huge amount of growth for the first month. And of course, that led on to a problem that if we've got smaller calves after the first month, coming into the second month, am I actually going to be eating as much grub as what I need to be to wean myself off the milk? And again, we saw around about that weaning stage, which at the time was between 40 and 70 days, we also had this plateau of growth rates. So the first thing we did to try and remedy this was we said, right, if I want to prevent this check at weaning, I need to increase my intakes. So what we did was we swapped onto the ForFarmers Calf Starter 18 nut. And at least we thought if we can do anything else on farm to increase intakes, I know that that product will allow me to eat more. And like I said, in the space of about 2 years, we found that we've managed to go from about 110 kilos up to closer to 200 kilos. And it's all sustainable, it's all consistent. But perhaps the biggest thing, and this is probably one of the main things I would point out to anyone rearing their own calves on farm, When we were looking at the milk feeder stage, a lot of milk powders we tend to manufacture, produce CHD, a lot of them are very, very similar, and it's just trying to find sometimes the ones which fit individual units. But the biggest issue in this farm, and we never changed the milk powder straight away, was we thought we're about 200 to 300 grams a day short worth of growth. Surely that can't come about just by changing a milk powder. So what we did was we actually tapped into the Home and Low feeder, and we started to work out, right, have we got the litres right? Have we got the feed plan right? And one of the biggest things was the bag that we were providing at the time said, I want 130 grams a litre. The machine said, what do you want? I typed in, we've got 130 grams a litre. However, the bag will only tell you how much grams per litre of milk is required. The machine accepts that value in how much grams per litre of water. So if I wanted to feed 130 grams of grams per litre of milk diet, I needed to set that machine at 150 grams per litre of water. And so the end result for that ended up that not only did we underfeed the calves by about 15-20 grams compared to where we should have been, but also because we hadn't had time to get around to calibrate the machine, we were a further 10% out. So these calves at 2 weeks old get 900 grams of powder. Then at 3 weeks, we dropped them down to 750, and then we expected them to pick up the slack with a starter feed that they just weren't consuming. So having then sort of put those fixes in place, increased the milk powder, changed our starter feed, we then fast forward that system another 12 months, and here were the results that we'd seen. Just changing that system and nothing else for a whole year, we gained roughly about 10 to 15 kilos on each individual calf versus the year before. And if we assume that those calves previously was doing close to half a kilo, and we've gained 15 kilos, we've saved ourselves nearly 30 days before these calves are even 3 months old. But something that's actually been removed for this graph, even at this point though, we still never got huge intakes in the round about the weaning stage, weaning at 70 days. So what we did at that point was we actually took the weaning at 70 days and we brought that back 2 weeks to 56 days and just gave those calves the extra bit of kick, forcing them to get those pellet intakes up. And that's what really set us in the right path for growing those heifers big, strong, with big intakes going forward in the next shed. So summarising the costs, and it's interesting comparing these compared to where Anne's were. Year one, we were averaging 26.5 months calving, albeit credit to the farm, we were probably already at that stage on target for 25 months. We spent about £135 in the first 3 months, which is a bit under what Anne had suggested, but we were feeding more milk powder and a bit less starter. We never got growth for about the first 6 months roughly, but then credit to the TMR at the time, it did tend to produce really good growth rates. Once the calves got going, we were just already held back by that kind of month, 2 months. But overall, in that first year, calving it down 26.5 months, we were costing us about £640 in feed. That being said, I've taken the ration from 2 years ago and I've put this year's costs. The following year, true to their word, we actually did start calving in at 24.9 months, which means that that 7 months till they get in calf stage was reduced by 2 months. We're not growing them for as long because they were already big enough. And at that stage, we dropped the cost to rear our heifers by 60 quid, even just in the space of that first year. And one of the biggest drivers of that was, of course, we've reduced how much time's left to grow, but we also had a higher whole crop percentage of the diet just because silage was maybe slightly on the shorter side. This year is a bit different because we've reduced the weaning age, which means we've lowered the amount of milk powder going into the calves, but we've had a big jump in the starter pellet intakes, which means our cost for the first 3 months has decreased. We've put more silage back in the diet. The silage is wetter than the whole crop, therefore our cost for the forage has gone up slightly. So we've gone up a tenner since last year, but considering we're now calving in at 22.9 months at the last time we've checked, I would say it's a very small sacrifice to make for the returns that those heifers are now providing. The most recent weights we've done, we did in December. This was the December weight check that we've managed. As you can see, we've got most of our points now dancing either side of our target line, which is good. We hit that 380 kilo bulling weight round about 375, 380 days, which is between 12.5 and 13 months, which is perfect. However, we do still have some of these stragglers that are sitting slightly behind the curve, and those are going to be the future for us to try and address, really. Yeah, so in order to just kind of surmise what we've just kind of said, we're now at 22.9. Part of that's through choice, because of course you kick on a lot of heifers, you're going to have a lot of heifers calving at once, and it's not always ideal. So we could go slightly below 22 if we had to. We've reduced the cost of feeding heifers in real farm scenario by between 50 and 60 pounds a head. And one of the most noticeable things that people have come to farm and other ForFarmers staff have brought to farm have said, the 0 to 3 month calves look fantastic, body condition, they've got the weight, they've got that shine to their coats. Heifers calving in 2 to 4 months sooner, which means of course we're going to spend less time and less money rearing them, and we're going to increase the lifetime profitability. James, I thought your first slide was interesting when you were saying 6,800 kilos was the average for the UK. Well, I can say that these heifers at their last recording who have finished the lactation were around 9,000 kilos of milk, calving at 22.9 months. And the range on that was the lowest was 6,000 kilos and the highest was 13,700 kilos on one of the heifers that had calved at 23 months. The future plans, permitting I've not been sacked in the morning for this, would of course be management of weights at grazing, because we always find when the heifers come in, we need to play a bit of catch up. We've still got a big variability in the TMR, and I'd say one of the big systems of a straw concentrate system is we reduce the variability, albeit at a slightly higher cost. And lastly, we would like to follow the production of these younger calving heifers to see just how much their profitability as a heifer over their lifetime has improved. And on the back of that, I'll pass back over.
Thank you very much, Michael. So
I need to mute.
We're coming up towards 8 o'clock. We've got 3 more minutes. We said we'd have a hard stop at 8, so it won't give us much time for questions. But I think just to summarise on here, so I hope you've enjoyed the talk this evening. There's been quite a bit of information in there. Really, it's about you and the opportunity on your farm. You know, what is it worth to you to get down to age at first calving of 24 months, or even lower if that's what you desire. We've got a great team. You've heard from 2 of our Youngstock team today. We've got a range of between 50 and 60 account managers across the country, all of which are highly skilled and there to help you to identify, the costs of improving age at first calving and many other things. We've also got lots of tools that we can help you with. We've got lots of products, and we'd love to work with you and to achieve your goals. And if I can bring you back on, Michael, if you're there, if you can unmute.
Yeah, I'm here.
We've got a few questions come through, one of which is, if fortifying milk, would you go for skim or whey based?
Yeah, I'd go for a skim based purely because of the way that it clots in the stomach. Works very similarly alongside whole milk.
One of the questions through is currently feeding at 150 grams per litre, but calf scouring a bit. What would be causing that?
It could be the amount of milk fed. So we work on a basis of 5% of body weight, which actually in those first few weeks is not very much at all if you've got a particularly small heifer or calf. So limiting the amount of milk and if possible feed 3 times a day, a smaller amount if that time is available.
Yeah, that's great. I've been trying to answer questions as they've come through during the webinar. So
thank you.
there's a few more with some extra technical bits onto there, but the system does capture so like who you are and the question you've asked, and so we will come back to all of you. So I'd like to thank you all for your time. We are still, I hope you're all keeping safe during COVID. We are still able to have meetings on farm by appointment only, and obviously taking all precautions there to keep you, your families, us and our families safe within these times. Very much looking forward to the lifting of these lockdowns and the pubs reopening. Other considerations, I think, with Target 24, though, if we look at the change from the basic payments through to ELM scheme, then carbon footprinting is going to be a greater thing. And so the number of stock that we keep on farm again, so it's probably worth looking at this point in time, because it does take a while to turn the ship around, doesn't it? With it going from 28 to 24 months age at first calving isn't an overnighter. So so please do contact any of the team. Hope you've all enjoyed that. ForFarmers, please do contact us and the team. We're here for you. Thank you very much to Michael and Anne this evening. They've done a great job there. Thank you to all those farmers that are currently working with us, and hopefully many more of you would like to work with us as well. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and please keep safe.